I'd always thought parking lots were harmless, even on Christmas Eve. They were just stretches of asphalt, lined with cars and buzzing lights, where people hurried in and out of stores with last-minute gifts or bags of groceries. That year, though, the lot behind the old grocery store felt different the moment I drove up. Maybe it was the late hour, or maybe it was the thin layer of frost coating the cracked pavement, glinting in the pale glow of the fluorescent lights overhead. Whatever it was, a chill clung to the air that went beyond the December cold, like someone had left the world a shade darker just for me. I parked toward the far end, as far from the store as I could manage, thinking I'd grab my things and be gone in a few minutes. The lights buzzed faintly, a low, almost electric hum that made my teeth chatter. At first, I chalked it up to tiredness, the kind that makes you imagine movement in the corner of your eye. But as I stepped out, the cold air cut through my coat and froze my thoughts. The lot was too quiet. Not the kind of quiet that comes with a gentle snowfall or a calm night, but a heavy, expectant silence, the kind that presses against your chest and makes breathing feel loud. There were no cars coming or leaving, no distant chatter, no wind rustling the trees beyond the edge of the asphalt. Just the empty hum of lights and my own boots crunching against the frost. That's when I first noticed the shadows. They didn't line up with the poles, or the cars, or anything that made sense. They flickered at impossible angles, slipping across the asphalt in a way that made my stomach tighten. I froze, my eyes scanning for the source, thinking maybe it was a trick of the light. But then I saw the figure. It moved between the lights with a silence that made my heart skip. At first, I thought it was someone else shopping late, maybe a worker finishing a shift. But the shape didn't make sense. Its movements were smooth, too fluid to be human, and yet it had a form that suggested a person. I couldn't tell if it was tall or short, thin or thick, and I realized that wasn't important. What mattered was that it was there, and it had noticed me. Panic made my feet move before my mind could catch up. I ran to my car, fumbling for the keys, hands slipping on the cold metal. The engine refused to turn over. I tried again, harder this time, but the motor only coughed and died. My breaths came fast, visible in the freezing air, and every instinct screamed that I shouldn't look back, but I couldn't help it. The figure followed, keeping pace without effort, a dark shape gliding across the lot. It never broke stride, never made a sound, and I felt that impossible weight of being watched so completely that I might vanish if I blinked. I remembered the warnings then. Notes scattered in mailboxes that week, hastily scribbled on cheap paper. Don't go near the lot after dark. I'd tossed them without thought, laughed them off. But the memory of those words now pressed into my mind, each syllable echoing as if spoken by the figure itself. This wasn't just a parking lot anymore. It was a trap, a waiting place for people who ignored the quiet rules of the night. I tried the store doors, but they were locked, the bell above them silent. No one came, no one watched from inside. It was as though the entire town had gone to sleep, leaving me exposed. Every instinct told me to hide, to make a run for the road, but the figure was always there, a moving shadow that mirrored my every movement, always just far enough to keep me off balance. My mind raced, recalling the layout of the lot, the cars, the light poles, anything I could use to break line of sight. I ducked behind a dumpster, pressed myself against the cold metal, and waited, hearing the faintest sound of footfalls, or maybe it was just the scrape of the wind against asphalt. My pulse thundered in my ears, and I thought I might pass out from fear alone. Hours seemed to stretch into an eternity. Every time I thought I saw a way out, the figure was there again, always silent, always patient. I started muttering to myself, trying to convince my mind that it was some trick, some late-night prank gone too far, but my words felt hollow. The lot had swallowed the normal rules, replaced them with something else, something patient, calculating, and utterly indifferent to my terror. Eventually, I don't know how, I made it back to my car and somehow got the engine to turn. The moment it roared to life, the figure stopped at the edge of the lot, standing perfectly still. I didn't look again, just floored the accelerator and sped down the dark road. In the rearview mirror, I thought I saw movement between the lights, something watching me vanish into the distance. Even now, long after the Christmas lights came down, I can't shake the memory. The lot isn't just asphalt and frozen grass. It's a place where the quiet watches, where shadows slip and stretch in ways that defy reason, and where warnings are not to be ignored. Some part of me still hears those impossible footsteps behind me, always keeping pace, always patient. It's left me wary of late nights and empty spaces, suspicious of silence that feels too heavy, and terrified of places that appear safe but are quietly waiting. That lot was never empty, and I'm not sure it ever will be. I always thought my grandparents' cabin would be the perfect escape for Christmas. Isolated, quiet, nestled deep in the hills where the snow blanketed the world and nothing moved but the wind through the pines. That year, I wanted peace, a reprieve from the hum of the town and the pressures of work, and the cabin had always promised it. But the first night, I realized that some quiet isn't peaceful at all. It's patient, it waits, and it speaks in ways you don't want to hear. I woke first to the faint, metallic tolling. At first, I thought it was a trick of the wind, an old decoration swaying on the porch, maybe a rusted bell someone had left hanging years ago. But the sound was deliberate, steady, marking time with a rhythm that made my stomach tighten. One toll, then another. Every hour, like a clock that counted not minutes but something heavier, something personal. I sat up in bed, my blanket tangled around me, and pressed my ear against the cold window. Outside, the snow lay thick, muffling the forest, but I could hear it, the faint, hollow clang of metal moving through the trees. It wasn't musical. It wasn't festive. It was a warning. I told myself it was nothing. I laughed in the dark, a weak, nervous laugh, blaming neighbors or some stray animal knocking against the roof. But when the second night came, I could feel it pressing in around me. The bells weren't outside anymore. They were everywhere. They seeped through the walls, rattling my bones and leaving a tremor in my chest that I couldn't shake. I couldn't locate them. They didn't come from the same place twice. I wandered through the cabin, the floorboards creaking under my steps, shining my flashlight in every corner. Nothing. No footprints, no wind, no signs that someone or something had been there. Just the sound. Hour after hour, toll after toll, like a heartbeat counting down to some event I couldn't understand. By the third night, fear had taken root. I lay awake, heart hammering, listening for the next toll. And then I heard it, from inside the cabin itself. Not outside, where it could be dismissed as wind or old metal, but closer. I froze, trying to convince myself I imagined it. That sleep deprivation had twisted the peaceful silence into something sinister. But when it came again, clear and cold, I knew it wasn't a trick. The sound was deliberate, echoing down the hall in a slow, measured rhythm. My pulse raced as I followed it, flashlight shaking in my hand. I passed through the living room, the kitchen, and the narrow hallway, each step heavier than the last. The smell hit me before I saw anything. Wet pine, earthy and sharp, like the forest had pressed itself against the cabin's walls. And yet, when I turned every corner, there was nothing. No one. Just shadows, slanting against the old wallpaper, stretching in ways that made my skin crawl. It was then that I realized the bells weren't random. They weren't just noises in the night. They were counting, measuring, marking. Every toll was a step closer to something I didn't want to know. I tried to stay rational, telling myself I had read too many ghost stories, that the wind could mimic the chime of metal against metal. But the dread in my chest wouldn't let me lie. Each toll carried intent. Each sound was a warning I'd ignored. I thought of the stories my grandmother had whispered long ago about the forest and its quiet, patient inhabitants, about the things that marked you when you disrespected the old ways. I had laughed at those tales as a kid, but now, alone in the cabin, I felt them settling in the room with me, heavy and suffocating. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. I kept the lights on, walking from room to room, every creak of the floorboards sending a jolt of panic through me. Outside, the snow fell silently, a gentle mask over the terror that waited beyond the windows. I thought of calling someone, but the phone lines were dead, as they always were this high up in the hills. I was alone, entirely alone, with the bells marking time and something unseen listening. The hours crawled forward, and when dawn finally broke, I didn't feel relief. I felt hollow, exhausted in a way that sleep could never fix. I packed my bags as quickly as I could, my hands trembling and my breath coming in short, ragged bursts. The tolling followed me, faint but persistent, as I slid my bag into the car and started the engine. I wanted to leave the hills behind, wanted to put the forest and the cabin and the memory of those sounds behind me forever. But even as I drove down the snowed-in road, the sound lingered. Not loud enough for anyone else to hear, not enough to make sense to anyone else, but there it was, pressing against my mind. Each toll a reminder that some warnings aren't meant to be tested, some places aren't meant to be entered lightly, and some nights carry their own logic that defies understanding. Even now, weeks later, I can't stop hearing it. The faint chime of metal, drifting on the edges of sleep, rattling through the quiet of my own home. Sometimes I wonder if I ever really left the cabin, or if some part of me stayed behind, marked and counted, waiting for the next toll to come. And when I think about Christmas, about the quiet snow and the stillness of the hills, I feel the weight of that night again. The patient, deliberate sound of bells that shouldn't ring, counting in a rhythm that only I can hear, marking something I'll never fully understand. I'd come to that small town for Christmas because I thought it would be picturesque, quiet in the way that makes people think they can escape the noise of their own lives. Streets lined with old brick houses, wreaths on doors, and carolers singing from every corner. It all seemed like something out of a postcard. I'd rented a little house near the edge of town, the kind that looked cozy in photos but felt isolated when the sun set and the fog rolled in off the hills. I never expected that the very charm I sought would turn into something that made my skin crawl. The first night, I heard her before I saw her. A soft, clear voice, singing outside my window, carried in the foggy air. At first, I assumed it was one of the groups performing in the streets. But then she sang my name. Not just my first name, but my full name, with the cadence of someone who had memorized every syllable of my life. I froze, gripping the windowsill as the hairs on my arms rose. She was close, I realized, but when I looked outside, there was no one. The fog was thick, curling around the street lamps like smoke, hiding everything beyond a few feet. I laughed nervously, telling myself it was a prank or a coincidence. Maybe the wind had carried someone else's song, twisted it in the right pitch and rhythm to fool me. But night after night she returned. I tried to leave town, driving out through the winding roads, but every time I turned a corner, there she was, always at the edge of the fog, watching. Not yelling or chasing, just standing there, singing softly, as though she had waited decades for someone like me. The words weren't random. She sang details, moments I hadn't shared with a soul. The time I'd broken my father's watch as a child, the argument I'd had with my best friend that left a scar on my memory, the quiet shame I carried from years of choices no one else knew about. It was intimate in a way that made me want to scream, to run, to ignore it and hope it went away. But I couldn't. I couldn't look away. I began to notice how she moved. Slowly, deliberately, always appearing where I might pass, waiting at the edges of streets shrouded in fog. Her presence was so subtle that anyone else would have assumed the night had shifted oddly, that the air itself had a rhythm. But I could feel her gaze, and it pressed down like a weight on my chest. I tried to confront her once, stepping out onto the porch, calling her name. The fog shifted, and she was gone. Just gone. As if she had never existed at all, leaving me shaking, staring into the gray that swallowed the street. The town itself didn't help. I went to the diner the next morning, hoping someone would explain her or at least acknowledge the oddities of the season. The locals were polite, cordial, but there was an undercurrent I couldn't place, an unspoken knowledge in the way they avoided certain corners of their eyes, the way their smiles didn't quite reach them. When I asked about the carolers, they said nothing, and I realized that perhaps this wasn't the first time someone had been visited, marked by the music that shouldn't have known my secrets. The nights stretched on. I didn't sleep, walking the house from room to room, listening for the notes that seemed to drift through the walls. And always, I could hear the faintest echo of her voice, drifting like smoke through the fog. My name, a whispered reminder, carrying a weight I couldn't bear. The fear wasn't the singing itself, it was the knowledge that she knew things she couldn't possibly know, that someone or something was marking me, counting me, judging my every move, and I couldn't escape it. I tried every method of rationalization. Perhaps it was a neighbor with an odd memory, someone who had overheard stories and twisted them into song. Perhaps the fog played tricks on sound, carrying echoes from decades past. But deep down I knew that logic wouldn't save me. Every detail she sang was precise, personal. Every appearance was perfectly timed, as if the world itself bent around her presence. The isolation of that house, the stillness of the streets, the quiet weight of the fog, it all worked in her favor. I was trapped, not physically, but in a way far worse. Trapped in the knowledge that ignoring her was dangerous. Christmas morning arrived. Gray and heavy. The town was silent in a way that seemed unnatural. I stepped outside, hoping for clarity, for some sign that what I had experienced was a hallucination or coincidence. But she was there, standing at the corner where the fog thinned, her gaze fixed on me. She sang once more, softly, her voice carrying not a song, but a reckoning. And then she walked away, her footsteps hollow on the snow-covered street, fading into the white that swallowed her whole. I understood then that this wasn't a game, wasn't a random encounter. The caroler wasn't just singing, she was marking consequences, weaving a thread that tied me to the town in ways I couldn't undo. I left as soon as I could, the engine of my car breaking the unnatural quiet, snowflakes spinning like tiny ghosts in the headlights. Even as I drove down the winding roads, leaving the hills and fog behind, I could feel her presence lingering. Not in sight, not in sound, but as a weight pressing on my mind. My own thoughts felt louder now, every secret, every hidden shame highlighted, as if she had left an imprint that traveled with me. I can't hear Christmas songs without thinking of her, without imagining her silhouette appearing just beyond the fog, singing my name again. I've returned to the town once since, trying to make sense of it, to rationalize the fear. But it wasn't the town that haunted me, it was the memory of her, the certainty that somewhere waiting in the quiet, someone knows your life better than you do, marking your actions with patience and precision. The experience left me wary of quiet streets, of fog that seems too thick, of carolers that appear alone in the night. And sometimes, when I close my eyes on cold December nights, I hear the faintest echo of her song drifting in through the corners of my mind, a reminder that some warnings are patient, deliberate, and not to be ignored.